big warm welcome for Derek.
So my talk today is about endurance, and I think for all of us the definition of endurance is different depending on what we do. So I think that there's different kinds. I guess today I'm really talking more about the practical side of endurance, but there's also the philosophical side, and sometimes I find that both of these merge together in the different things that that I do. I like to share real life experiences, so a lot of the things that I talk about is not what I read about in a textbook, but I've actually done them. So when I tell people that I run across a desert, people automatically think like, did you really run across a desert? And I have to say, yes, I've actually run across a few deserts, not just one. It's so much easier to talking to little kids because they just believe whatever you say, right? But adults, you have to show them pictures, otherwise, if it's not in pictures, if it's not on social media, it never happened, right? I like to tell stories. I think a really interesting thing is to have the skill to be able to tell stories, and it's something that we do every day, whether we're talking to our colleagues or our friends or family or even at work. You're always trying to tell a story, make it exciting, share an experience with somebody, and having that skill set is very important. So what's interesting about me, because I don't have a whole lot of time, I'm just going to kind of throw this all into one slide. I've written a couple books, one about running, and then my favorite was writing a children's book. So I get to go to kids' schools and I get to read my story to kids. But I found a way to kind of tie that in to helping the community. So the money that I raised, that was generated from selling these books, I donated to my charity. So I have three passions. One is with startups. The second one is with youth education, and the third is with animal welfare. So I always try to take the skills that I have and try to somehow figure out how to turn that into the benefit for the community, because it's very important to me to be able to give back. I was on the board of the SPCA for 10 years, and I was automatically retired because I hit that 10-year limit where you can't continue on, so I had to sit back on that. I'm also on the board of Junior Achievement because I really enjoy being involved with youth education. And then just earlier this year, I joined the American Club Foundation, which also helps the community. And one of my passion projects is working with Hong Kong Metropolitan University. I'm an advisor to the dean there, and I love coming up with all of these bringing the startup community into universities and then helping to extend what they do. Because I think if you come out of university with an education, you need a network to connect to. So why do that after you graduate? Why don't you do it while you're in school? So I've an idea generator, always thinking about these different things. I run. I'll talk about that. So I have a map with all these little blue dots on them, and those are kind of like all the places that I've gone running in. So pretty much all over the world. I'm a closet chef, so I've never been professionally trained. My parents never taught me. It was just my own curiosity and passion to make that steak that much better. So I would just keep repeating over and over again that cooking process until I got it right. So one of the best life skills that I've had, that I've learned is repetition. Repetition will solve anything. So if you want to get good at running, just go run a lot. If you want to get good at boxing, get punched in the face a lot, right? If you want to get good at investing, you have to lose money. You have to lose money in order to learn how not to lose money the next time, right? Ask the right questions next time. So repetition is really key. You know, your 10th spaghetti, the 10th time you cook your spaghetti will always taste better than the first time you made it. So repetition is really key. So I grew up in Hong Kong. This to me is Hong Kong, not all the glass and the tall skyscrapers that you see today. I'm very nostalgic. I really miss the old Hong Kong. When I grew up in Hong Kong, there was no Pacific Place, there was no Times Square, there was no such thing as IFC. The newest building at that time that I can remember was the Landmark, and Exchange Square was under construction. We only had 2 tunnels in Hong Kong back then. And there were no air conditioning on buses, right? So this goes way back, and I think the minimum fare for taxis was like $2.50. So that's the Hong Kong that I miss. And as I mentioned, I grew up here. I went to international school. There's a picture of me just starting out doing sports. And I always grew up being the smallest kid. As you can see now that I'm still small, but I got picked on a lot, as kids do when they're in school, and I realized that my pillar of confidence came from sports. So I started doing all kinds of sports just to kind of challenge myself. But I also realized the power of making friends. So all the big kids that used to pick on me, I would just make friends with other big kids so that they would tell them to not bother me. So it's something that I think is important, is to be very social and to always meet new people. So here's a picture of me running in the Sahara Desert in Egypt. It's 50 degrees Celsius. There's no shade anywhere, and I'm running for 250 kilometers, right? And that's over a span of like 6 days. And I would have never guessed that when I was a kid, when I was the picture you saw before, that I would ever be doing something like this, right? And people were like, well, why would you want to, right? So I started doing different kinds of sports. I was doing kickboxing, jumping out of airplanes, rock climbing, hiking, climbing mountains, scuba diving, of course running marathons. And then my new thing now is jiu-jitsu. And I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning just to get to a 6 a.m. class. And it's really hard to get up when it's still dark outside. But if you get up to go running in the morning, you can kind of like slowly get up and go run at your own pace. But when you go to a jiu-jitsu class and you have to enact violence on another person at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's really hard. So one of the most challenging things for me was to take jiu-jitsu. It's something that is just constant evolving, and you're always learning. And it's probably the toughest thing I've ever done is learning how to choke somebody. So there's a group of people that I train with. We train in the morning, and it's this kind of this bonding or this brotherhood, which I think is very special. That's the new thing that I'm doing now. But I realized that safe will never get you to awesome. So don't always live in your circle of comfort. You always have to kind of expand out and push your limits, because I think naturally people always want what's safe and what's predictable, what's routine, because you can't go wrong with routine. But if you push yourself every day to do 10% more than what you did yesterday, that's how you get an incremental improvement. So I've run across 9 deserts, 4 jungles, 6 mountains, and it's not so much those numbers, but if you think about the 23 years of training that you have to do every weekend when you have some time in order to be physically ready to go and do these ultra marathons, then that type of mileage really adds up. I'm really upset. I've been really upset this whole week because actually on November 1st, so 4 days from now, I've been training, and I'm supposed to get on an airplane and go to Jordan to run across the Wadi Rum Desert, 250 kilometers. And of course, as we saw all seen in current events, the organizers decided to cancel the event. So you have a highly trained person with no place to go. It's really, really frustrating. So I've been training every weekend. I've had my backpack with all my food and equipment. I've been running from mid-levels to Stanley and then Stanley back home, and getting really geared up and mentally prepared. And then to get on a call with the organizer and say, you know what, it's too risky. We're not going to have this event. It's like the logical side of me says, yeah, that's probably the right decision. But the competitive side of me says, just run faster, So I think that the greatest ideas you will ever have are the ones that other people don't understand. I think this is very true for people who do startups. People are like, oh, why are you doing such a crazy thing, and you have to go raise money and start your company, and that's always a challenge. But as long as you believe in yourself and in the mission that you wanted to do, why not, right? So that's what I took in terms of like running across the desert. People are like, why would you want to do that, right? People's definition of a marathon is 42 kilometers. So I've done the highest altitude, driest, hottest, and coldest. So the highest is the Gobi Desert in China. It's 5,000 meters above sea level. The hottest is the Sahara Desert, it's 50 degrees there. The driest is the Atacama Desert in Chile. It hasn't rained in over 50 years in some places. And of course, Antarctica, minus 26 degrees. It is also defined as a desert because it's a place with little or no precipitation. So it's so cold there, water freezes, right? So that's also a very barren place. And of course, each place has a very different unique challenge to it. So I just talked about Jordan. The reason why I'm so upset about Jordan is because this is actually the second time I haven't been able to go. I signed up for Jordan in 2015, started training for it. So I post and I record all my runs on my watch, and there's me running all the way out to Stanley and back. And then I used marathons to train for my marathons. So I went to Bangkok. I ran the Bangkok Marathon as one training session, and then go one before that. Okay, it's the next one. So then I ran the Hong Kong Marathon. That was another training session done, and then the next one after that, the race was canceled because of just all the conflict that's going on in the region. So again, I was a person without a race, and I was really frustrated. So when you do a startup, there's always that pivot of like, what else can I do? So so I went to Sri Lanka, and there happened to be an ultra marathon there that was also 250 kilometers. So instead, I ran across Sri Lanka. So what I learned about that is that just like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So no matter how much you plan for something, something will always go wrong, right? And that's just the reality of life. So you always have to have a plan B. So I went to Tokyo, and I ran a marathon in Tokyo, again, as part of my training. But as part of this event, I tore my hamstring. So I fell, and then all the other runners just kind of like all fell on top of each other. And I ripped my hamstring, but I didn't know it. It just hurt a lot. And I never want to quit, so I just kind of hobbled and kept going, and then ended up finishing. But I had committed to going to Sri Lanka. So 12 days later, I was at the start line. You see me there on the far right-hand side, where I was basically getting ready to run a ultra marathon with that injury. So I had good days, hard days, so-so days. I had really bad days where I was just really struggling just to get it done. My leg was really hurting a lot, and I really didn't think I could finish it. But I had just thought about, well, what is it like if I don't finish? And my wife wrote me notes to say, keep going, and I had hamburger feet. And then on the last day, I had to climb 1,870 steps up to the top of this rock for the finish line. It was only 16 kilometers after running the 200 plus, and I got to the finish line. So what I learned is like, just things will just come out and you'll never expect it, but you just have to find a way to get what you want done. So I think that you should always share these types of stories with other people because you never know how you might impact another person. Um, so I do a lot of speaking. Later today, I have to go to my old high school to do a similar talk. And then last week, I met you at a tech talk, and that was a completely different type of tech talk. It wasn't about running, so I'm sure you might be surprised to learn this side of me. And I've done a TEDx talk, which is really neat, just inspiring youth. And then a bit about my book writing. It's a great way to extend your reach to a different audience, and then to go out and promote the skills that you have for the benefit of the community. That's my dog, Tommy the Salami, and he's in my book. It's great. I was actually hiking up to the peak with my dog, and I was having breakfast, and this lady and her 3 kids come over and is like, "Oh, your dog is so cute. Can my kids pet your dog?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So the kids were petting, and the kids were like, "Well, what's your dog's name?" I said, "Oh, his name is Tommy the Salami." And the mom laughs, and she goes, "Ha ha ha." She goes, we have a book at home called Tommy the Salami." I'm like, that's him. She's like, "Oh my God, that's the dog." So really cute. So just to go from a goal of having a blank sheet of paper, drawing on it, and turning that into a book that goes on store shelves for sale is a pretty incredible feat. So now I get to go to children's schools. I read my book to kids. It's not going again. And then, of course, I talked about my cooking. Next slide, please. It's a great way to make friends, and I talked earlier about just repetition is the mother of all skills. And I just love cooking for friends. I never cook for myself, I just cook for friends. And I found a way to auction myself off at charity events, and if the winning bidder gets me as a take-home chef. So just keep that in mind. And then I tore my hamstring. People think it came from running. But actually it was in a game of dodgeball. And again, that's another challenge where I went through the rehab, went through the surgery, had the reattachment. Next slide, please. But if it's important to you, you will find a way, right? So 5 weeks later, I ran the Macau Marathon. And then 8 weeks later, I ran the Hong Kong Marathon. And then everybody said, "Oh, but what you really like to do, run across deserts, you don't know if you can do that." And I said, "You're right. I don't know if I don't try." So I tried to do it, and 13 weeks later, I went to Namibia and I ran across 250 kilometers across that. And I've never looked back since then. So my doctor was so happy, he put me in the hospital brochure. So this is the new normal, right? So the way I used to be is never going to come back. You just have to find a way to keep moving forward. So don't live in your comfort zone. Outside of that is where things happen. So you always have to keep testing yourself. And when it comes to running these things, it's about getting comfortable with uncomfortable. So all the pain and injuries, you just have to get used to that and push past it. You have to carry all your food and equipment in a backpack, sleeping bag, 7 days of food, first aid kit, headlamp, trekking poles. Everything has to go in your backpack as you're running across these different deserts and jungles and mountains. I really believe that, if back in the days, the gladiators, or when you train for a sports game, you try to make that as real as possible, because if you can make that as real as possible, then when you actually go and do the actual event, it feels very normal. Man has to suffer. When he has no real afflictions, he invents them. So I came up with this affliction of running with a sack of rice. So I put that in my backpack. It's called Mini Me, and I run around Hong Kong with it. I do trails with it. I run on the treadmill, and I just get into the habit of just running with something on my back. And this picture here with me on the treadmill, one time a trainer came over and said, "Oh, you must be new here, but we have locker rooms. You don't have to carry stuff when you run." And I said, "No, I'm actually training for something." So funny stories like that. I used to go to India a lot for work, and the treadmills there don't work. So I found a way to just push it and just get the same type of workout. Sometimes you'll see me running on Hong Kong with one of those training masks, and a good way to challenge. So I'll wrap up my talk here with just being an entrepreneur and thinking about, what are all these marathons for? What is the purpose of that? And if you think of that as a platform, and then you add to that just networking and writing books and getting sponsored, and I'm sponsored by Patagonia. Who doesn't like free stuff, right? It's just great to have that type of recognition, and then being able to help charities travel around the world as the next layer. But then through that, you're able to do more things with that. It all kind of gets put together, and that whole story really starts to make sense. So give what you have to someone. It may be better than you think. You have no idea how far your words can take you. So I always believe in just kind of sharing that story. Want to end with this. It's a very short talk today. I'm really happy to meet new people. If you ever want to sit down and have a coffee, just send me an email, and I'm happy to sit down with you and get together. So thank you for that. So May is my ex-colleague from work, and what she wanted me to bring up was that on one of these races, it was a multi-sport race, and I actually had to learn how to ride a horse and then do it in competition, and it was called the ride and run. I think it was like you drew straws, and half of your team got to ride on the horse, and the other half had to run alongside the horse. So the straw that I drew was the one to run alongside it. I had to run like 35 kilometers with a backpack, with the horse not running, but just trotting alongside you. And then when we got to that 35-kilometer mark, we had to trade places. So I had to get on the horse, and horses know if you can't ride. So the horse threw me, and I landed on my head, and I hurt my neck, and ended up getting put on a helicopter, and then going to a hospital, and it was just a horrible event.
You finished the race.
But I finished, yes.
So you finished even though you had a neck injury?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
Hey, thanks for the talk. It was very inspiring. I'd really like to know, when you're training, and when you're in these races, you're racing for days, right? What motivates you to keep going when you're really in that like deep hole, and you just think, most people would just give up? What motivates you to keep going?
It's a great question. I think I just learned that, so the very first time I did one of these, which was the Hong Kong Trail Walker, which is 100 kilometers, you get to a point where you start to question, why am I here? What am I doing, right? And that's the worst type of hole to be in, because if there's no one around you, it's really easy to cancel on yourself. So with my 4 teammates, we did that so Trail Walker is 10 sections. I think by section 2, so you've only done 20% of it, we questioned why we were there. And we said we could actually be at home right now, hot shower, hot food, warm bed, air conditioning. We really don't need to be here. So we quit. The next morning, woke up, it was like Saturday morning, and I was like, oh yeah, I feel fine. Things are great. Monday morning comes around, I come to the office, and everybody's asking me how I did. And I'm like, oh, didn't finish. Oh, did you get hurt? I'm like, no. What happened? And was the weather bad? I was like, no, I just didn't feel like doing it, right? So that type of repetition makes you feel regret, like you did something wrong, right? And of course, the natural human reaction after regret is redemption. You want to redeem yourself, but that's next year. So you train, and then you try to redeem yourself the following year. So that, I think, of the consequences of not finishing what you set out to do, but making that public is the thing that kind of drives me. Is like, how can I be up on stage giving a motivational talk or an inspirational talk to people if I can't even finish something? So when I'm in that dark moment, and it happens every time, it doesn't get better. Every time when I get out there, the first, when you're still warming up on the first, second, or third day, you're still kind of warming up because it's a 6-day run. You always question, I thought last time was the last one you're ever going to run. Why are we doing this again? Your body's like telling you this. But then you think about the consequences of coming back to Hong Kong and telling everybody here, or telling my wife and my kids that I didn't finish. That sits with you for a long time until you can redeem yourself the next year.
This question is actually based on what I saw just now. One, I've noticed that you've not run in North America. Is there a reason for it, by choice or whatever? Second question is, what does McDonald's ketchup have to do with the Bangkok Marathon?
Oh, great. So why don't I run in North America is I don't find North America that exotic of a place to go running. I mean, like, I've been to Iceland, and running in Iceland or Namibia. No one thinks about, when you think about Africa, no one thinks about Namibia. You think about the other countries that are exciting, but Namibia is just amazing, right? And if you don't go to those places, you just don't know. So I find like the U.S., North America, Canada, I can always go whenever, some other time, but I want to go see all these really cool places first. I mean, my last run, which was just before COVID, was in 2019. I was in Albania. That's a really cool place to go too. Yeah, so that, and then the other reason is ketchup. So I've gone through all this testing about like power bars and power gels, and anything that tastes healthy doesn't taste good at all, right? And we all forget that food is a morale booster. So why don't you eat something that you like, that's comforting, that you're familiar with? So I love ketchup because it has sugar, it gives you energy, vitamin C, right? And it tastes good. So yeah, it's like ketchup tastes great when you go running. But I also bring M&Ms, I bring jelly beans, beef jerky, potato chips. You will not find one power bar in any of my food.
How would you define balance in life?
Balance? Good question. How do I define balance? There's balance for yourself to make sure you're centered, but then there's also balance to the people around you. So I find that that's always the challenge I have, is like, I might be balanced because I need to go out for a run, but my runs are like 3 or 4 hours. So that takes up a huge chunk of my day. But then when I come home, my family's not balanced because they've been waiting for me to do stuff. So it's every day, every week, it's always a different combination, just depending on what needs to be done. So if I'm training for an ultra marathon, of course, my hours for running will take up more time than family time. But then the following weekend, you kind of have to give back and make that trade-off. Yeah, but I think what's most important is that yourself has to be balanced in order for you to be able to balance everybody else. Because if I'm cranky, nothing works, right? So like at home, my wife knows that if I can go out and do my run, like let's say on a Saturday, then Saturday afternoon and all of Sunday, I'll do whatever you need with the family.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously you had a couple of injuries and recovered from those, and you keep running, but what's your regimen to keep your body being able to do what you do? I mean, when you talk to nutritionists, your snack bag probably wouldn't grade in the A1 bucket, so I'm just wondering, what do you do?
So I know for a fact, without meeting many of you, that I'm the most unhealthy person that you have ever met. You can be fit but healthy. You can be fit and healthy, but you can also be fit and unhealthy, right? So I live on junk food. That's my vice. I think everybody's allowed to have one, whether it's drinking or partying or whatever. That's your vice. Mine is junk food, and I will not give that up for anything, right? But how do I keep my fitness level or the different injuries that I have? I guess I've been fortunate not to have injuries that would really change what I do. But my friend Tommy's there. We do jujitsu. I tore my MCL earlier this year. I was out for 3 months. I had a bag of frozen hot dogs strapped to my leg when I got injured. And then 3 months later, my cardio went to 0. And then that climb back up to get up to my fitness level again, that was a real struggle because I just didn't have the cardio anymore. When I tore my Achilles, my calf muscle atrophied because I just wasn't using the muscle anymore. But if you stay religious and disciplined about the rehab, that's really key. A lot of people who tear their Achilles and they limp around and they tell you, oh, I can't do this anymore because of my injury, is because they didn't go through the rehab. They didn't have the discipline to go through the rehab. So when I tore mine was a complete separation. It wasn't a tear. So my calf muscle was up behind my knee, right? Nothing was connected to my heel. So I had surgical reattachment, and then everybody said I should start playing golf. And I was so set on getting back to running that I went through the rehab and did it religiously every day so that I could go out and run. So that discipline, that mindset of just making sure that you recover is very important.
Thank you, Derek, for the talk. It's really inspiring. As a final question, I would like to ask, what is your ultimate goal? Because I watched several documentaries about mountain climbers, and they usually go to Himalaya, and in Himalaya there are 14 peaks, and then usually are asked when will you finish? When are you done? And they say, I will finish when I climb all the 14 mountains, all the 14 peaks. And then I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And then when you were talking about running, I recalled the scene in Forrest Gump. Everyone is like, run, Forrest, run. And then he's running whole states, and then everyone is running after him. And once he stops and said, I'm tired, and goes home. And do you have this kind of ultimate goal? Okay, after I reach 100 marathons, I'm done. I will be satisfied.
I think at some point in our lives as we get older, especially when you become a parent, it stops being about yourself and it starts being about other people. Whereas before I might have had goals like that of just kind of trying to achieve those, now everything for me is just about family, right? So my goal of when am I done is when my kids will be able to run across a desert with me. They don't have to like it, they just have to do it. That's my goal, is once I can check that box, then I'm done, right? So everything, all the preparation that I've done up to now has just been to inspire them to reach beyond what they think are the limits and just to keep moving forward. So I have twin girls, they're 6 years old. They can run 5K now, which I'm super happy with. My 4-year-old boy, he did his first long distance run ever this summer, just a few months ago. He ran 4K. Little kitty legs, just trying to do it, but I let his sisters lead the way, and he just ran until he couldn't run anymore. So just having that mindset of society will set what they think are the norms. Oh, if you run a marathon, you should only run one a year, and you need a whole year to train for it. And then you need weeks to recover from that, and call in sick on Monday because you should recover. But then you go and run these ultra marathons, and you're with all these other people that are running 250 kilometers with you. That's a marathon every day for 6 days, and you realize, oh, that's their norm. This is society's norm. Where do you fit in? And then once you realize that, yeah, that's totally achievable, then when I come back here and I'm running a marathon, it's the next day I'll just go run another one because you know what's possible.
Thank you, Derek. Big round of applause for Derek, please.